Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we transform a mountain of articles, research, and expert notes into the most surprising, insightful, and frankly fascinating nuggets of knowledge custom-tailored for you, our well-informed listener.
Always great to be here.
Today we're plunging headfirst into a topic that, well, over the last 2 decades has truly shifted. It's gone from the realm of, fringe theories and speculative fiction right into the serious halls of government, national security, and scientific inquiry. We're talking about unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs.
Right.
You might know them by their older, more sensational name, UFOs, but trust me, this isn't primarily about the sensational. It's about what military pilots are actually seeing, what our most advanced sensors are picking up, and frankly, what remains stubbornly unexplained.
And that's precisely our mission for this deep dive. We've pulled together a stack of really incredible sources, declassified military reports, really compelling pilot testimonies, rigorous scientific analyses, official government statements, the whole gamut. Our goal is to extract the absolute most important insights from all this material. We'll dissect what has truly been observed in our skies, the, well, astonishing capabilities these phenomena appear to demonstrate.
Astonishing is the right word.
It really is. And then we'll pivot to the spectrum of possible explanations, ranging from the easily dismissed and mundane, the usual suspects, all the way to the truly extraordinary.
So we're talking about incredible aerial feats, objects that seem to just defy our current understanding of physics, and the immense challenge of distinguishing advanced, maybe classified technology from simple misidentification.
Exactly. It's a huge challenge. We'll explore the evidence for and against exotic origins, delve into that unique challenge of objects moving seamlessly between air and water, which is a big one.
Huge.
And uncover what the government has officially put on the record versus what remains implied or classified.
So this is a deep dive into a phenomenon that's genuinely pushing the boundaries of science and national security, forcing us to reevaluate what we thought we knew. So grab your headphones, buckle up, because this is going to be a captivating exploration.
Let's do it.
For decades, the term UFO conjured images of, well, grainy photos, Roswell conspiracies, and, let's be honest, a good punchline.
Oh, absolutely. The giggle factor was high.
Right. But something fundamental has changed, hasn't it? Especially in the last 20 years or so. It's brought this topic squarely into the mainstream of serious discussion. What, in your view, really sparked this transformation? What shifted the landscape from fringe to, well, front-page news sometimes?
It's a profound shift, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And the journey of UAPs from, those fringe theories to serious scientific and national security discourse has been propelled by several key catalysts.
Okay.
Arguably the most significant, the real kickoff, was that series of New York Times articles that broke in late 2017.
I remember those. They made a huge splash.
They really did. And these weren't just speculative pieces. They authoritatively revealed the existence of a formerly secret Pentagon program, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP.
ATIP, right.
Which operated discreetly from about 2007 to 2012. But maybe more importantly, these articles made public some really astonishing military videos of the Gimbal, Flare 1, and GoFast videos.
Ah, yes. Those videos, they definitely captured the public's imagination because they weren't just, blurry lights in the sky. They were clear, sensor-validated recordings from trained military personnel using advanced equipment.
Exactly. High-tech military sensors. And that brings us to another crucial factor. This wasn't just a media sensation. There was also a very concerted effort behind the scenes and then more publicly to reduce the stigma for military personnel who actually witnessed these things.
That must have been a huge hurdle, the stigma.
Absolutely massive. The reduction of stigma associated with reporting UAPs has been instrumental. Historically, military and commercial pilots who encountered something anomalous, well, they often self-censored. They feared ridicule, professional consequences, maybe even psychiatric evaluation.
Yeah, career under, potentially.
Potentially, yeah. Think about the culture. If you reported a UFO, your credibility, your career could be jeopardized. But with the Pentagon explicitly encouraging reporting, and then the establishment of official bodies like the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, the UAPTF, in 2020, and then its successor, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, in 2022, there's been a significant, almost unprecedented increase in documented sightings.
So people felt safer coming forward.
Exactly. And this shift is critical because you cannot analyze or understand what isn't reported in the first place. Without that open channel, valuable data just remains locked away in individuals' minds or, maybe unofficial logs.
Right. So we've gone from whispers and, frankly, jokes to formal official government bodies dedicated to this. Could you walk us through those key governmental responses like ATIP, UAPTF, and now AARO? What differentiates their mandates in tackling this phenomenon?
Certainly. As we mentioned, ATIP was the initial sort of discrete program. It operated quietly for 5 years before its existence was publicly acknowledged by those 2017 New York Times articles. Its primary focus was on investigating credible reports of advanced aerospace threats, often with a counterintelligence angle. Is this somebody else's tech?
Makes sense.
Then in 2020, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, UAPTF, was established as its successor. The UAPTF's specific mandate was to synchronize efforts across the Department of Defense and the broader U.S. government.
Okay, more coordination.
Yeah, to detect, identify, and attribute objects of interest, particularly in what's called special use airspace.
Yeah.
These are areas restricted for military operations. This was a direct response to the increasing pilot reports and the obvious national security implications.
So more focused on military airspace and threats.
Initially, yes. But building on that, in 2022, AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, superseded the UAPTF and significantly expanded its scope.
All domain, what does that mean exactly?
It means AARO's mandate isn't just about aerial phenomena anymore. It covers UAPs across all domains: air, sea, space, and even potentially terrestrial environments, land-based sightings.
Wow, okay. That's broad.
Very broad. This means they are responsible for developing scientific plans for data collection and analysis, detecting and identifying objects near sensitive areas, mitigating potential threats, and providing regular official reports to Congress, both classified and unclassified.
So a much more systematic approach.
Absolutely. This evolution truly demonstrates a unified, systematic, and sustained approach to what was once a highly fragmented and often ridiculed effort within the government. It's a clear signal that this issue is now viewed as a legitimate national security and scientific concern. No more hiding in the shadows.
And for many people listening, this whole serious conversation really started to crystallize with specific high-profile encounters, particularly the Nimitz and Roosevelt incidents. These weren't just, isolated sightings by one person. They involved highly trained military personnel, often corroborated by multiple advanced sensor systems. Let's really dig into the 2004 USS Nimitz incident, often called the Tic Tac case. What was the context there, and why is it considered so compelling?
The Nimitz incident is, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, it's ground zero for the modern UAP discourse.
Ground zero, okay.
It involved a U.S. Navy carrier strike group. That's a massive naval formation with some of the most advanced radar and sensor systems available at the time out in the Pacific off the coast of California. What's absolutely crucial to understand is that anomalous objects were observed on radar for several days before the visual encounters happened.
For days, not just a blip.
For days. The USS Princeton, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser screening the strike group, was equipped with the highly sophisticated AJS combat system. This features the powerful SPY-1 passive electronically scanned array radar.
That's top-of-the-line stuff.
It really is. This isn't just a standard radar. It's designed to track hundreds of targets simultaneously with incredible precision. It can discern fine details, even in a cluttered environment, like the open ocean. The fact that this system, for days, repeatedly tracked these objects, even when they seemed to vanish visually or perform impossible maneuvers, adds immense credibility to their physical reality.
What kind of maneuvers are we talking about on radar?
The reports indicated these objects would appear suddenly at very high altitudes, like 80,000 feet, then drop almost instantaneously to sea level, maybe 50 feet above the water, in literally seconds. Then they'd hover and then shoot straight back up at a radar range.
Wow. Okay. So this wasn't just a momentary glitch or a fleeting visual. This was a persistent multi-day phenomenon tracked by arguably the best radar systems of its time. And then Commander David Fravor, an experienced FA-18 Super Hornet pilot, commanding officer of VFA-41, had his direct visual encounter. What exactly did he describe seeing, and what made it so striking?
Commander Fravor described a white, completely featureless oblong object, approximately 45 feet long, he estimated. And it looked remarkably like a Tic Tac mint, hence the name.
The Tic Tac?
Yeah. He emphasized its sleek, seamless form. He noted it had no discernible wings, no engines, no control surfaces, no plumes of exhaust, nothing. He specifically described its outer shell having a texture like a whiteboard, just smooth, maybe even a little dull, almost unreflecting.
A whiteboard? Fine.
Exactly. What made his testimony so compelling was his extensive experience. He had thousands of flight hours, was a highly decorated pilot, a Top Gun graduate. He was intimately familiar with every type of aircraft, both friendly and potentially hostile. He knew what he should be seeing up there, and this just wasn't it.
And its behavior was truly, truly unusual, right? I remember hearing something about the water below it frothing or boiling. Can you elaborate on that? What does that imply?
That detail is absolutely critical and often gets overlooked. Fravor reported observing the water directly below the object was churning, frothing, or boiling, almost like something large was submerged just beneath the surface, or like the object itself was interacting intensely with the ocean.
But without touching it.
Without touching it and without any visible downwash or propulsion. This suggests an active interaction with the environment, possibly an immense amount of energy being transferred, maybe via some kind of field or unknown technology, rather than conventional thrust.
Okay, that's bizarre. What else did he observe about its movement?
He described its movement as erratic but controlled. Like a harrier, he said, meaning it could hover and then accelerate rapidly, changing direction almost instantly. He estimated its speed when it moved horizontally was around 500 knots, maybe at an altitude of 500 to 1,000 feet. That's fast, but maybe not impossible. But what truly sets this apart, and points to capabilities far beyond our comprehension, are the reported instantaneous maneuvers. Like the radar track suggested, it was seen to descend from, say, 28,000 feet down to near sea level in less than a second.
Less than a second? That
Yeah.
G-forces must be insane.
Exactly. We're talking potentially thousands of Gs. And then, as Fravor descended towards it to get a closer look, it rapidly ascended, mirrored his altitude, and then just accelerated away at a speed he described as unbelievable, vanishing in seconds.
That sounds absolutely wild. Defies everything we know about aerodynamics, material science, human physiology.
Everything.
So what about the aftermath back on the carrier, the USS Nimitz? How was this perceived by other military personnel? How was it handled?
Well, when Fravor and his wingman, Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich, who also saw the object returned, they were thoroughly questioned. About their jets, first, were they malfunctioning? No, they were brand new, fully functional, no anomalies reported by the aircraft systems.
Yeah.
They were also checked for any physiological issues. Did they experience hypoxia, vertigo? No, nothing. They were perfectly fine, despite witnessing maneuvers that would be instantly lethal to any human pilot inside a known craft.
But the reaction from others.
But here's a really telling detail about the culture at the time. Despite the seriousness of the encounter, the advanced sensor corroboration from the Princeton, the credibility of the pilots, personnel in the Carrier's Intelligence Center, the CVAC, initially greeted Fravor and Dietrich by donning makeshift tinfoil hats.
Seriously? Tinfoil hats?
Seriously, openly ridiculing them. This just highlights the deep-seated stigma that existed, even among supposedly serious intelligence professionals. It shows just how unusual and, frankly, unbelievable the event was, even for them. The pilots weren't asked to sign any unique non-disclosure agreements about the sighting itself, but they faced constant ridicule for weeks afterward.
That's incredible. And you mentioned something earlier, the deck logs.
Yes. Compounding the confusion and suspicion, the official deck logs from the USS Nimitz for that specific time period, November 2004, are reportedly missing or somehow unavailable.
Missing. How does that happen?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Officially, reasons can range from administrative error to records being archived elsewhere or potential classified separately due to the nature of the events. Unofficially, of course, it fuels speculation about a cover-up or an attempt to control the narrative around an event they couldn't explain. It just immediately raises questions about transparency and accountability. It seems almost too convenient.
Yeah, convenient is one word for it. Okay, let's shift gears now to the other major incidents that really brought this into the public eye. The 2014-2015 USS Theodore Roosevelt encounters. What was the context for these sightings? Who was involved?
These incidents involved Lieutenant Ryan Graves' squadron, the VFA-11 Red Rippers, another FA-18 Super Hornet unit. They were operating off the east coast of the U.S., primarily near Virginia Beach, during their workups for deployment.
Okay, East Coast this time.
Right. And the key context here is that the sightings dramatically increased after their jets received a radar sensor upgrade, specifically the ANAP PG-79 ASA radar.
So better sensors started seeing more things. Or different things.
That's the implication. Graves specifically noted that these objects almost came with them during their training exercises along the eastern seaboard. It wasn't a one-off event. It was a sustained pattern of encounters over months, almost becoming routine, disturbingly routine, in their designated training airspace.
Disturbing is right. And what did Graves and his squadron visually observe? What did these UAPs look like, and what kind of behavior did they exhibit?
Lieutenant Graves described the objects quite specifically as a dark gray or dark black cube inside a clear sphere. He estimated them to be between 15 and 20 feet in diameter.
Hmm.
So a very distinct visual description, quite different from the Nimitz Tic Tac.
A cube in a sphere. That's
Well,
odd.
very odd. And what was equally startling was their observed behavior. These objects could apparently remain perfectly stationary, hovering at high altitudes, even against hurricane-force winds that would ground or seriously challenge any known human aircraft, drone, or otherwise.
Stationary in hurricane winds? How?
That's the mystery. They exhibited no visible propulsion, no exhaust plumes, no wings, no rotors, yet they could operate continuously throughout the day, far outlasting the endurance of their F-A-18 fighter jets, which need constant refueling.
Right. Jets have limited flight time.
Exactly. Fighter jets have maybe an hour, hour and a half of station time before needing fuel. These objects were reported to stay out there for 12 hours or more, seemingly without any need for refueling or apparent energy source. This continuous operation is a critical, baffling detail.
And there was a near miss reported too, wasn't there? That must have been terrifying, not just for the pilots involved, but for the whole squadron. What happened there?
It was indeed a harrowing experience and really underscores the safety issue. Graves detailed a near miss where one of these cube-in-a-sphere objects flew directly between two F-A-18s that were flying in formation, only about 100 feet apart.
100 feet? That's incredibly close in aviation terms.
Dangerously close. It forced immediate evasive action from the pilots. This wasn't just a curiosity anymore. It became a direct flight safety hazard. It's precisely why Graves later warned publicly that these regular sightings endanger military aviators and must be treated seriously like a foreign adversary, potentially probing defenses or operating recklessly.
That makes sense. It's a direct risk.
Yeah, the increased reporting, while good for data collection, simultaneously highlights this escalating risk of close air collision, which is paramount concern for military flight operations. It forces a strategic reevaluation of airspace security and pilot safety protocols.
So these encounters definitely spurred more official reporting and raised national security concerns. But what about the information itself? The videos, the data? Is it easily accessible to the public or even to, say, members of Congress who are supposed to oversee this?
And that's a truly critical point, probably one of the biggest frustrations in this whole phenomenon. Lieutenant Graves has explicitly testified before Congress that essentially all UAP videos generated by the U.S. military since around 2021 are classified as secret or top secret.
All of them.
That's his testimony. This level of secrecy prevents not only the public but also many members of Congress and even their cleared staff from seeing the full extent of the current evidence.
So even lawmakers are in the dark.
To a large extent, yes, unless they have the highest clearances and specific need to know. This lack of transparency, while may be understandable from a strict national security perspective if these are adversary technologies, well, it simultaneously fuels mistrust and speculation within the public and among lawmakers who feel they aren't getting the full picture. It creates an information vacuum that conspiracy theories just rush in to fill.
That secrecy issue brings us perfectly to what many people find truly mind-bending about these UAP sightings, their reported capabilities. We're talking about feats that seem to challenge everything we know about physics and aerospace engineering. Luis Elizondo, formerly of ATIP, helped popularize what he calls the 5 observables. Can you break those down for us? What exactly are they, and why are they so significant in this discussion?
Sure, the 5 observables are essentially a structured way, a lexicon, used to analyze and categorize the reported UAP capabilities that appear to defy conventional physics and known aerospace engineering.
Okay, a framework.
Exactly. They're significant because they describe characteristics that aren't just incrementally better than our current technology, like a slightly faster plane. They seem fundamentally different, suggesting a completely unknown, possibly revolutionary underlying principle or technology. And what's particularly compelling about the most credible cases, like Nimitz or Roosevelt, is that they often involve a combination of these observables reported simultaneously by different sensors or observers.
Right, it's not just one weird thing, but several at once.
Precisely. That makes a simple, prosaic explanation much, much harder to accept.
So let's break them down. What's the first observable?
The first is anti-gravity lift, sometimes called positive lift. This describes an object's apparent ability to overcome Earth's gravity with absolutely no visible means of propulsion.
No wings, no jets.
No wings, no rotors, no fins, no propellers, and crucially, often no detectable heat signature from engines or exhaust plumes, which our infrared sensors are specifically designed to pick up. This fundamentally differs from all known human aircraft. Think about it. Every single aircraft we've ever built, from a simple kite to the most advanced stealth bomber, relies on aerodynamic lift generated by wings moving through air, or by pushing mass downwards like a rocket or helicopter.
Right, Newton's third law, action-reaction.
Exactly. These objects, by all accounts, appear to simply ignore gravity, hovering silently, accelerating vertically or horizontally, without any discernible mechanism pushing against air or expelling mass. It's like seeing a car hovering silently a foot off the ground, with no wheels, no engine noise, no exhaust, no downward thrust of air. It just hangs there.
And how does that connect directly to the cases we just discussed, like the Nimitz Tic Tac or those Roosevelt objects?
They are pretty much quintessential examples. The Nimitz Tic Tac was observed hovering motionless over that disturbed water, and then accelerating at incredible speeds, all without any visible means of propulsion. Commander Fravor was adamant about that.
Right, the whiteboard had no features.
Exactly. Similarly, the Roosevelt cube in a sphere. Objects were described as having no visible means of lift or propulsion, yet they could remain perfectly stationary even against those hurricane-force winds at high altitudes. Our aircraft require immense amounts of energy, specific aerodynamic designs, and constant control inputs just to stay airborne, let alone fight strong winds. These objects seem to operate entirely outside those known physical rules.
Incredible. Okay, what's the second observable? This is the one that always gets me thinking about what a human body could possibly withstand.
Ah, yes, that would be sudden and instantaneous acceleration. UAPs are frequently reported to accelerate and change of direction with a rapidity that would simply be structurally catastrophic for any known human aircraft. And just as importantly, instantly lethal for any human pilot on board.
Lethal G-forces.
Exactly. The implied G-forces from these reported maneuvers, sudden stops, hairpin turns at high speed, instantaneous changes in direction or velocity, are often calculated to be in the hundreds or even thousands of Gs.
Thousands compared to what for our best jets?
Well, a modern, highly maneuverable fighter jet, like the F/A-18s involved in these encounters, is structurally limited to around 9 Gs, maybe 10 or 11 Gs for very brief periods. And even at 9 Gs, pilots wear special G-suits and employ straining maneuvers just to stay conscious and avoid GLOC, or G-induced loss of consciousness.
So 9 Gs is pushing the limit for human endurance.
Absolutely. Now imagine attempting to pull hundreds or thousands of Gs. The airframe would disintegrate instantly. Any biological occupant, human or otherwise as we understand biology, would be, well, instantly crushed or effectively turned into slurry by the inertial forces.
A grim thought. The Nimitz Tic Tac case had a prime example of this kind of acceleration, didn't it? That incredible vertical drop.
Absolutely. The Tic Tac reportedly dropping from 28,000 feet to sea level, that's roughly 5.3 miles, in significantly less than a second, maybe 0.78 seconds, according to some radar analyses. That's the textbook example of this observable.
Less than 1 second to cover over 5 miles vertically.
Yes. To put that in perspective, the acceleration required is just astronomical, far beyond anything achievable with conventional propulsion or materials. Such a maneuver in any known aircraft, let alone one carrying a pilot, would instantly vaporize it. It strongly suggests a complete manipulation or negation of inertia itself, a concept far beyond our current engineering or even theoretical physics capabilities.
Okay, that's 2 capabilities, anti-gravity and instant acceleration, that seem to just break physics and biology as we know it. What about the third observable, speed-related?
Yes, the third is hypersonic velocity without signatures. This means traveling at extreme speeds, specifically hypersonic speeds, which are typically defined as Mach 5, 5 times the speed of sound or greater, but without producing the typical signatures we'd absolutely expect to see.
Signatures like...
Well, the most obvious is a sonic boom. When any object breaks the sound barrier, it creates a shock wave, a loud boom. When it flies at hypersonic speeds through the atmosphere, it also typically generates immense friction with the air molecules. This produces incredible heat, thousands of degrees, making the object glow brightly and leaving a visible ionization trail or heat signature that our sensors can easily detect.
Right, like meteors or re-entering spacecraft.
Yeah, exactly. The reported absence of these signatures, no sonic booms heard, no massive heat trails seen by infrared sensors, even when objects are tracked moving at calculated hypersonic speeds, is deeply puzzling. It strongly suggests some kind of exotic mechanism is at play. Perhaps one that somehow isolates the craft from the surrounding medium, like creating a localized warp bubble or space-time distortion, or maybe by generating a plasma sheath around itself that alters airflow and heat dissipation in ways we don't understand.
Fascinating. So it's not just that they're incredibly fast, but how they're fast, or rather, how they manage to avoid the usual consequences of that speed and atmosphere. That seems to lead right into the fourth observable, doesn't it? Low observability.
Yes, it does. They're likely related. The fourth observable is low observability, or it's sometimes called stealth. These objects often appear to be nearly undetectable or have a very small signature on certain sensors, like radar, despite their physical presence being confirmed by other sensors, like infrared or visual, sometimes simultaneously.
So they can be hard to see, even for our best detection systems.
Exactly. And this isn't necessarily just conventional stealth technology as we know it, like the shape and materials of a B-2 bomber designed to deflect radar signals away from the receiver. The theory sometimes proposed for some UAPs, especially those seen glowing or shimmering, suggests that a plasma sheath, that layer of ionized gas potentially used for propulsion or signature reduction, could also actively distort, refract, or even absorb incoming sensor signals like radar waves.
So it could act like a cloaking mechanism.
In effect, yes, or at least a very advanced form of electronic warding or signature management. It could contribute to their stealthy appearance on radar, while potentially explaining why they might glow visually or on infrared. It represents a level of stealth and active sensor manipulation that is, again, far beyond our current operational capabilities, combining radar stealth with low IR signature and potentially visual masking.
Okay, anti-gravity, instant acceleration, hypersonic speed without signatures, low observability. And finally, the fifth observable, which you called the ultimate technological discriminator, and one that directly addresses a core question for this deep dive, transmedium travel.
This one is, for many analysts, perhaps the most mind-boggling and convincing indicator of truly exotic technology. Transmedium travel refers to the seamless ability of an object to transition between vastly different physical mediums, specifically air and water, and sometimes even being tracked entering or exiting space and operating efficiently, perhaps optimally in all of them.
And you said this is considered an insurmountable challenge for human technology right now. Why is it so difficult for us? What are the fundamental engineering contradictions?
It boils down to the vastly different physical properties of air and water, and consequently, the completely opposed engineering requirements needed to navigate them effectively.
How different are we talking?
Consider density. Water is approximately 800 times denser than air at sea level. 800 times. An airframe designed for flight, typically lightweight, with thin wings for aerodynamic lift, would be instantly obliterated by water impact at almost any significant speed. The drag forces and structural loads would be catastrophic. It would be like slamming a delicately built glider into solid concrete.
Okay, so airplanes can't just dive into the ocean. What about submarines flying?
Exactly the opposite problem. A submarine hull is designed to be incredibly strong, robust, and heavy to withstand the immense crushing pressure of deep water. It's fundamentally unsuited for flight, it's far too dense, has terrible aerodynamic properties, and lacks any mechanism to generate lift in air.
So the shapes and structures are totally incompatible. What about propulsion?
Just as contradictory. Air-breathing jet engines, which power most high-speed aircraft, obviously require oxygen from the air and cannot function underwater. Propellers designed for air are wildly inefficient and structurally inadequate for pushing against dense water. Conversely, submarine propulsion systems, like large propellers optimized for water or water jet drives, are completely useless in the air.
Have we even tried to build something that does both?
We have experimented with some concepts, mostly small drones. You might have a drone with quadcopter rotors for flight and separate small underwater propellers. But these are clunky separate systems. They only permit very slow, very deliberate transitions between air and water, usually requiring the drone to stop, reconfigure, and then proceed slowly. They are absolutely nothing like the seamless, high-speed, high-efficiency transmedium capability reported for some UAPs, objects allegedly seen entering or exiting the water at high velocity without even slowing down, or operating equally well deep underwater and high in the atmosphere.
So a vehicle that operates optimally in a near vacuum space, a thin gas air, and a dense liquid water without any apparent change in form or function.
Precisely. It implies a mastery of physics, particularly dealing with drag, pressure, and inertia that is far beyond our current understanding. It might even suggest a technology that somehow nullifies or bypasses these environmental interactions altogether, perhaps through some kind of field propulsion or space-time manipulation.
And this directly connects to the expansion of UAP discussions to include unidentified submerged objects, or USOs, right? Are we actually tracking things moving between the air and the sea?
Yes. Reports from Navy personnel, sonar operators, and defense analysts strongly suggest that some objects observed visually or on radar in the air are subsequently tracked entering the water, or sometimes emerging from it. This makes our extensive network of undersea surveillance arrays like SOSUS and other naval systems designed for detecting submarine activity suddenly highly relevant to the UAP investigation.
So our underwater sensors might be seeing them too.
Potentially, yes. If these objects can move freely and efficiently between such vastly different mediums, it truly represents, as mentioned, the ultimate technological discriminator. It separates these phenomena from any known or even plausibly projected human-made craft, no matter how advanced or classified we might imagine it to be. It is perhaps the single most puzzling and compelling piece of this entire mystery.
So with these truly astonishing capabilities being reported, capabilities that, as you've just laid out, seem to push or even break the boundaries of known physics, it's really easy to jump straight to the most sensational conclusions. Aliens.
Understandably so. The observations are provocative.
But science demands we explore the full spectrum of possibilities, starting with the most common, the most well-understood explanations, the mundane, and the misidentified. It's crucial to rule these out first, right? What are some of the most common objects or phenomena that get mistaken for UAPs?
Absolutely vital. We have to ground ourselves in the known before leaping to the unknown. And many, probably the vast majority of UAP reports, especially from the general public, can indeed be attributed to common misidentifications. For instance, the International Space Station.
The ISS. How?
Well, think about it. It's larger than a football field, covered in reflected solar panels, making it significantly brighter than almost any star or planet in the night sky. It moves across the sky relatively fast, silently, and often on a trajectory that seems unusual if you're not expecting it. To someone unfamiliar, especially at dawn or dusk when lighting conditions are tricky, it can easily look like a strange, fast-moving, silent craft. It's a classic example of unfamiliarity breeding misinterpretation.
Okay, I can see that. What else often gets confused for something unknown, particularly things that might mimic that classic flying saucer shape?
Oddly shaped clouds are a big one, particularly lenticular clouds.
Lenticular, those smooth lens-shaped ones.
Exactly. They often form at high altitudes, typically near mountains, and they have this very smooth, almost artificial-looking disc or saucer shape. What's really deceptive is that despite potentially high winds at that altitude, they often remain stationary relative to the ground observer because they're formed by air flowing over terrain. This creates a powerful illusion of a solid, hovering, structured object.
So they look like they're defying the wind.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Some of the most iconic flying saucer photos from the early days of UFO sightings, pictures that caused widespread public excitement or even alarm, were later convincingly identified as just lenticular clouds. Their stationary nature against high winds has fooled even seasoned observers for decades. It just shows how easily our brains can misinterpret visual cues, especially when primed to see something unusual.
Okay, clouds. What else is on the list of common misidentifications?
Oh, there's a long list. Space debris re-entering the atmosphere can look spectacular and strange. It often burns up, creating brightly colored trails, sometimes breaking into multiple pieces, looking very otherworldly. Occasionally, strangely shaped wreckage might even make it to the ground, fueling speculation.
Right.
Then there are weather balloons. They're responsible for countless sightings, including the truly famous 1947 Roswell incident. That was initially reported in newspapers as a flying disc captured by the Army Air Forces.
The Roswell balloon, right, Project Mogul.
Exactly. It was later revealed to be part of Project Mogul, a top-secret high-altitude balloon array designed to listen for sound waves from potential Soviet nuclear tests. These balloons can rise to incredible altitudes, maybe 40 kilometers or about 170,000 feet, before the pressure difference causes them to burst. From the ground, seeing something silently ascend that high and then maybe burst or disintegrate can look remarkably like an exploding aircraft or something highly unusual.
I hadn't thought about them bursting like that.
Yeah. And even rocket launches or misfires can cause confusion. Remember that strange, enormous white spiral with a blue beam that appeared over Norway back in 2009?
Vaguely, yeah. Looked like something out of sci-fi.
It did. Caused a huge stir. It turned out to be a Russian Bulava submarine-launched ballistic missile test that had malfunctioned spectacularly during its boost phase. The spinning, venting fuel created that bizarre spiral effect. Without that explanation, it looked completely anomalous.
Okay, so rockets, balloons, clouds, the ISS, what else?
Beyond those, you have bright planets, especially Venus. It's often called the morning star or evening star and can be incredibly bright. When seen near the horizon, atmospheric distortion can make it appear to flicker, change color, or even move slightly, leading people to mistake it for a distant aircraft or hovering light. Meteors, or shooting stars, are common. The rare phenomenon of ball lightning, though still not fully understood scientifically, could account for some reports of glowing orbs. Atmospheric effects like mirages can distort distant objects. And of course, there's an increasing number of conventional drones, military aircraft, sometimes involved in classified testing, and regular civilian aircraft that are simply misidentified, especially at night or from a distance.
So, a huge number of sightings probably have perfectly logical, if sometimes initially startling, explanations. But then we get to the more complex cases, the ones that ATIP and AARO focus on, often involving multiple sensors and highly trained observers, like those famous Navy videos, Gimbal, GoFast, FLIR 1. Skeptics like Mick West have offered quite detailed debunkings for some of those. What are his main arguments against them being truly anomalous?
Mick West, who is a retired software engineer and a well-known science writer and debunker, has spent a lot of time analyzing the publicly released Pentagon UAP videos frame by frame. His analyses often focus on potential misinterpretations of sensor data and optical artifacts.
Okay, so what's his take on, say, the gimbal video, the one where the object seems to rotate?
For the gimbal video, West suggests it's likely just the infrared glare from the hot engines of a distant conventional aircraft, possibly a jetliner. He argues that the apparent rotation isn't the object itself spinning, but rather an artifact caused by the rotation of the gimbal mechanism within the FA-18's targeting pod as it tries to maintain lock on that distant heat source. He also posits that the OURO described by the pilots around the object is probably just an effect of the camera's image sharpening algorithms, not a real energy field.
Okay, so camera artifact, not object rotation. What about GoFast, the one that looks like it's skimming the water?
For GoFast, West argues it's most likely a relatively slow-moving object, probably a balloon or maybe even a bird, at a much higher altitude than it appears. He suggests the apparent high speed and low altitude, skimming the water, are illusions created by parallax.
Parallax. How does that work here?
Parallax is the effect where the position or direction of an object appears to differ when viewed from different positions. In this case, as the FA-18 jet and its camera is moving rapidly forward, a distant, relatively stationary object viewed against the ocean surface can appear to be moving very quickly in the opposite direction, especially when viewed through a zoomed-in targeting pod. The calculation of its speed depends heavily on accurately knowing its distance and altitude, which West argues were likely misjudged by the system or the observers.
So perspective makes it look faster and lower than it is. Plausible. And the FLIR-1 video, the original Tic Tac video from the Nimitz encounter.
For the FLIR-1 video, which is the grainy black and white infrared footage associated with the Nimitz Tic Tac, West suggests it's simply showing a distant, unresolved shape, most likely just another distant plane. He argues that the apparent jumping or erratic movement seen in the video isn't the object performing physics-defying maneuvers, but rather artifacts of the camera system rapidly switching between different zoom levels or tracking modes and momentarily losing and reacquiring the target lock.
Camera glitches, essentially.
Or just normal operational artifacts of the targeting system when tracking a distant, low-signature target. And then there was the Green Pyramid video leaked later. What was his take on that?
Oh yeah, the green triangle thing. That looked really weird.
It did initially. But West, along with other analysts, convincingly demonstrated that the Green Pyramid effect was almost certainly caused by photographing the lights of a conventional airliner, likely a bokeh effect, where out-of-focus lights take on the shape of the camera's aperture, through a night vision device that happened to have a triangular aperture. The green color is typical of night vision imagery, so a mundane explanation fitting the visual evidence perfectly.
Okay, so his work really highlights how camera systems, optics, and perspective can create compelling illusions even when viewed by trained personnel through advanced sensors.
Exactly. His analyses emphasize the importance of understanding the limitations and potential artifacts of the sensor systems themselves before jumping to conclusions about the object being observed.
It certainly sounds like his analysis is thorough for the video component, revealing how these optical effects can mislead. But this raises a really important question about eyewitness reliability itself. Even for highly trained pilots like Commander Fravor or Lieutenant Graves, can their testimony also be unreliable, despite their obvious expertise?
This is precisely where the skeptical argument often gains traction, and it's a valid point to consider, even if uncomfortable. While pilots are absolutely highly trained observers, their primary expertise lies within the realm of known aircraft, known flight dynamics, and interpreting sensor data they're familiar with.
Right.
Human eyesight, even for pilots, is notoriously poor at accurately estimating distances, sizes, and speeds of unfamiliar objects in an empty sky, especially beyond relatively short ranges, maybe a few hundred feet. There are few reference points. Pilots are also, like all humans, susceptible to optical illusions, like parallax, spatial disorientation, especially during high-G maneuvers or unusual attitudes, and potential misidentification, particularly under conditions of high stress, excitement, or when observing objects at great distances, or against complex backgrounds like clouds or water.
So even the best can be fooled by their own eyes or brains.
It's possible. Skeptics argue that even the most experienced observers can misperceive things or misinterpret ambiguous sensor readings, particularly when confronted with something completely outside their frame of reference. This isn't about questioning their integrity or skill at all, but simply acknowledging the inherent limitations of human perception and even sophisticated sensor data in complex dynamic environments. Our brains try to make sense of ambiguous input, and sometimes they fill in the blanks incorrectly.
But then, what about the cases like the Nimitz encounter, where you had multiple sensor systems? The Princeton's powerful SPY-1 radar tracking targets for days,
Hmm.
the E-2 Hawkeye airborne radar also involved, Fravor Zone radar, the FLIR infrared camera, and multiple direct visual sightings by 4 trained aviators, all seeming to corroborate each other. If Mick West's explanation for the FLIR-1 video is just a distant plane with camera artifacts, does it really account for everything else that was reported over those days? The radar tracks, the water disturbance, Fravor's close-up visual.
And that is the critical counterargument to the purely prosaic or skeptical explanations. And it highlights the immense challenge of definitively debunking the truly complex multi-sensor UAP cases. Accepting a simple prosaic explanation for an event like the Nimitz encounter requires you to believe that multiple independent, highly advanced sensor systems, radar, IR, electro-optical, possibly even weapon seekers, all malfunctioned or misinterpreted data simultaneously, and that multiple highly trained human observers also misperceived reality simultaneously, and perhaps most improbably, that all these errors and misperceptions just coincidentally happen to corroborate the narrative of a single anomalous object performing impossible maneuvers.
That seems statistically unlikely.
It strains credulity for many investigators. Explaining away just the FLIR-1 video as a distant jet with camera glitches doesn't adequately address the preceding multi-day advanced radar tracking by the USS Princeton's AGIS system, nor does it explain the direct, close-range visual encounters described by Commander Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Dietrich, who were specifically vectored by the Princeton's controllers to the location of those radar targets. They didn't just stumble upon it randomly.
So the context matters hugely.
Immensely. The core analytical difficulty here is that the most extraordinary parts of these encounters, the instantaneous accelerations, the extreme G-force maneuvers, the sudden appearances or disappearances, often aren't fully captured on the brief video snippets that get released or leaked. The parts that are recorded are frequently the most technically ambiguous moments, like tracking a distant dot, and thus they become the most vulnerable to debunking efforts that focus narrowly on isolated frames or potential optical effects, without necessarily addressing the totality of the encounter reported by witnesses and other sensors.
Right, you have to look at the whole picture, the triangulation across multiple independent sources, not just nitpick one piece of potentially ambiguous video. So, with all that complexity, what has AARO, the official DoD office, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, actually concluded from the thousands of reports they've received and investigated so far? What's their official stance?
Okay, so AARO, under its recent leadership, has processed a really large number of UAP reports. The number mentioned was over 1,600 as of late 2024, though that number keeps growing as reporting improves. Crucially, their consistent official stance, stated publicly in their reports to Congress, is that they have not discovered any verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial beings, extraterrestrial activity, or off-world technology.
No aliens found officially.
That's the official word. However, their findings on the cases they've been able to close or resolve show a very strong pattern towards mundane explanations. In their reporting, they've indicated that a very large percentage, maybe around 70% of recently resolved cases, were identified as balloons or balloon-like entities, things like weather balloons, research balloons, or even just airborne clutter like mylar balloons.
70% balloons, that's a lot.
It is. Another significant chunk, maybe 16%, were identified as conventional drones or unmanned aircraft systems, UAS. Then smaller percentages were attributed to birds, around 8%, satellites or space debris, 4%, and known aircraft, 2%.
So the system is catching a lot of normal stuff.
Exactly. It shows that AARO's new, wider data collection net is working effectively in the sense that it's casting a broad scope and successfully identifying and filtering out a large volume of mundane objects or phenomena. It's sorting the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
But what about the chaff, or rather the wheat? What about the cases they haven't closed?
That's the key qualifier. These percentages apply to the closed or resolved cases. A significant number of reports, particularly many of the more compelling ones involving military encounters with advanced sensor data, still remain uncharacterized or unresolved in AARO's official assessments. Their own reports acknowledge that some of these unresolved cases appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities, echoing the findings of the earlier ODNI reports. So, while they haven't found aliens, they also haven't explained everything away as balloons or drones either. The mystery persists in a subset of cases.
Okay, so if it's not always a mundane misidentification, and it's not yet officially confirmed to be alien technology, what's that middle ground explanation? The one that the Pentagon and national security folks seem most genuinely concerned about.
The middle ground hypothesis, and indeed the explanation that is treated as the primary national security concern by the Pentagon and intelligence agencies, is the possibility that the most advanced UAPs, the ones exhibiting those 5 observables we discussed, particularly things like silent hypersonic flight or extreme maneuverability, are in fact highly classified, perhaps disruptive or leap-ahead technology developed by a strategic competitor.
Meaning China or Russia? Or someone else?
Primarily, yes, those are the nations usually considered. Or potentially even a non-state actor, though that's less likely for this level of technology. This represents a genuine nightmare scenario for defense planners.
Why a nightmare scenario?
Because if an adversary has secretly developed and deployed technology that can outperform our best fighter jets, evade our most sophisticated radar and air defense systems, and potentially operate with impunity in our restricted airspace, well, that represents a massive intelligence failure and a fundamental threat to national security. We're not just talking about a slightly faster jet. We're talking about a technology that could potentially render our multi-trillion-dollar defense infrastructure obsolete. Imagine drones that can instantly accelerate away from missiles, or surveillance platforms that can hover undetected over sensitive sites. That's the strategic nightmare, an asymmetric technological advantage that could fundamentally shift global power dynamics.
That's a truly chilling thought.
Yeah, it is. And from a purely pragmatic military and intelligence standpoint, the most prudent security posture is to assume these highly capable, unidentified objects are a potential foreign threat until definitively proven otherwise. Because the potential consequences of being wrong, of underestimating an adversary's capabilities, are simply too catastrophic to ignore.
That makes sense from a defense perspective. Is there any historical precedent for this kind of middle ground confusion, where things that seemed completely alien or unexplained later turned out to be our own or another nation's secret technology?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a very relevant historical parallel that gets cited often in these discussions. Many waves of UFO sightings in the past, particularly during the Cold War in the 1950s and 60s, caused significant public concern and prompted extensive military investigation.
Right.
A large number of those sightings were later convincingly attributed to secret U.S. reconnaissance aircraft operating at the edge of the technological envelope at the time. Think of the Lockheed U-2 spy plane, flying much higher and longer than anything else, or the SR-71 Blackbird, flying faster than Mach 3 at altitudes above 80,000 feet.
So people saw things they just couldn't comprehend technologically.
Exactly. When people saw these unfamiliar shapes moving at unprecedented altitudes or speeds, often with unusual flight characteristics compared to conventional aircraft of the day, they simply had no frame of reference. They looked unidentified. The secrecy surrounding these programs meant even other parts of the military or government weren't always aware of them, leading to genuine confusion.
And did the U.S. worry about Soviet saucers too?
Yes. Interestingly, the U.S. itself even pursued its own experimental saucer-style aircraft designs back in the 1950s, like the Avrocar under Project Y or Project 1794. Part of the motivation for these secret programs was a genuine fear that the Soviets might be developing similar, potentially revolutionary aerospace technology based on captured German designs or independent breakthroughs. So this history lends significant credence to the idea that what we might be seeing now, in some cases, could be the next generation of highly classified human technology. Maybe ours, maybe someone else's so advanced that it appears alien even to our own frontline military pilots.
And if these are indeed highly classified human technologies, perhaps involving radical advancements in areas like propulsion, energy systems, maybe compact nuclear fusion reactors, exotic electromagnetic drives, advanced AI-piloted drones, then the intense secrecy surrounding them would make perfect strategic sense, wouldn't it? To avoid exposing these cutting-edge capabilities to adversaries.
Precisely. If a nation, ours or another, has achieved breakthroughs in areas like, say, practical compact fusion power, or workable warp metrics, or highly efficient electromagnetic propulsion. These would be technologies with profound military and economic implications. They would be among the most closely guarded secrets imaginable.
So the secrecy isn't necessarily suspicious in that context.
Not necessarily. Revealing the existence, let alone the performance characteristics, of such revolutionary human-made black projects would instantly give away potentially decades of research and billions, maybe trillions of dollars in investment. It would hand adversaries a massive intelligence advantage, allowing them to catch up or develop countermeasures. The intense secrecy, the compartmentalization, the need-to-know restrictions, all standard practice for highly sensitive programs, would be entirely justifiable from a national security standpoint.
And that could potentially explain things like the missing Nimitz deck logs, too. Not necessarily a UFO cover-up, but protecting sensitive program details?
It's certainly a plausible alternative explanation favored by some analysts. The missing Nimitz logs, or the classification of recent videos, could be explained as efforts to protect sensitive sources and methods, meaning preventing adversaries from understanding exactly what the U.S. military was able to track, how it tracked it, revealing sensor capabilities, and for how long. There's also the more complex theory that some UAP investigations might even serve as deliberate distractions or psychological operations, perhaps to justify increased military spending, to mask unrelated classified activities, or even to gauge adversary reactions. Or, at its most benign, maybe some sightings are just unintended consequences of accidentally observing our own highly classified military vehicles during unrelated operations or UAP searches. This inherent tension between the public's desire for transparency and the government's need to protect legitimate national security interests is a constant undercurrent running through this entire debate. It makes getting clear answers incredibly difficult.
All right, so we've thoroughly covered the mundane misidentifications and the very real, very concerning middle ground possibility of advanced human tech. Now let's tackle the big one. The explanation that captures the public imagination like no other. The extraterrestrial hypothesis, or ETH, the idea that some UAPs might actually be alien spacecraft. What are the main arguments for its plausibility, especially when you consider those 5 observables we talked about?
The arguments favoring the extraterrestrial hypothesis often hinge directly on those 5 observables themselves, particularly their apparent violation of, or radical departure from, known physics and engineering principles.
Because they seem impossible for us.
Essentially, yes. As we detailed, capabilities like instantaneous acceleration, implying thousands of g-forces, seamless transmedium travel between air and water without apparent reconfiguration or change in performance, or sustained hypersonic flight within the atmosphere without generating massive heat signatures or sonic booms. These aren't just small improvements over current tech. Physicists and aerospace engineers have noted that achieving such feats would likely require not just incremental engineering breakthroughs, but potentially multiple technological leapfrogs based on entirely new physical principles.
New physics.
Potentially. We're talking about things like controllable gravity manipulation, anti-gravity, inertia negation or modification, perhaps accessing higher dimensions for travel, or harnessing energy sources far beyond chemical rockets or jet fuel, maybe zero-point energy or controlled fusion antimatter reactions. If a phenomenon consistently demonstrates capabilities that seem to fundamentally break our understanding of physics, the argument goes, then perhaps its origin lies outside our current terrestrial technological development. It suggests a fundamentally different and vastly more advanced mastery over nature.
So if it breaks our physics, the reasoning is it must be non-human, potentially extraterrestrial. That's a significant leap. But what other factors lend plausibility to this idea, maybe looking at the bigger cosmic picture?
Beyond the observed flight characteristics, the sheer vastness of the universe and the rapidly growing understanding of exoplanets definitely plays a significant role in the ETH discussion.
The number of planets out there.
Exactly. Thanks to missions like NASA's Kepler Space Telescope and now TESS, we know that planets are incredibly common throughout the galaxy. Billions, likely trillions of planets orbit other stars just in the Milky Way alone, and a significant fraction of these are located in the habitable zone of their star, where conditions might be right for liquid water to exist on the surface. The Goldilocks zone. Right. Given these staggering numbers and the age of the universe, around 13.8 billion years compared to Earth's 4.5 billion, many scientists and thinkers argue it becomes statistically improbable, perhaps even arrogant, to assume that Earth is the only planet where complex, intelligent life capable of developing advanced technology has ever arisen.
The odds seem against us being unique.
From a purely statistical standpoint, yes. The late Carl Sagan, a prominent astronomer and early proponent of SETI, search for extraterrestrial intelligence, speculated even decades ago, based on very conservative estimates, that Earth might have been visited thousands of times throughout its geological history by civilizations traveling at relativistic speeds, assuming interstellar travel is feasible and common enough.
Thousands of visits.
Potentially, over cosmic timescales. Then there's the more theoretical but intriguing concept of von Neumann probes.
Self-replicating probes.
Yes, hypothetical self-replicating robotic probes, first conceived by mathematician John von Neumann. The idea is that a technologically advanced civilization could launch these probes to nearby star systems. Once there, the probes would use local resources to build copies of themselves, which would then launch to further star systems, and so on. This process could allow for the exploration and potential mapping of an entire galaxy on timescales much shorter than the age of the galaxy itself, maybe just millions of years, not billions. The argument is, if such probes are possible and were launched by any ancient civilization, shouldn't they be everywhere by now? Perhaps some UAPs are manifestations of such ancient autonomous technology. So the universe is vast, potentially full of habitable planets, and may be traversable by probes. Those are powerful arguments for the possibility of extraterrestrial life and even visitation. But what are the strong counter-arguments from the scientific community against the idea that aliens are actually visiting us here and now, manifesting as UAPs? The primary and most scientifically rigorous counter-argument is the persistent lack of direct, unambiguous, verifiable physical evidence of alien visitation or technology here on Earth.
The "where is everybody" question, or the lack of hard proof.
Exactly. While anecdotal reports, blurry photos or videos, and even compelling eyewitness testimony from credible individuals like pilots are valuable data points that warrant investigation, they don't meet the high bar of scientific proof. Science demands repeatable experiments, testable hypotheses, and falsifiable evidence that can be independently verified by the broader scientific community. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, as Carl Sagan also famously said. The reasoning of, "I don't know what that object was, therefore it must be aliens," is considered a logical fallacy, an argument from ignorance.
So unexplained doesn't automatically mean extraterrestrial.
Correct. Furthermore, decades of systematic searches for extraterrestrial technosignatures primarily focused on detecting artificial radio waves, or laser signals from interstellar distances. Conducted by projects like SETI at home, and the more recent well-funded Breakthrough Listen initiative have yielded no definitive, unambiguous results. Breakthrough Listen, for example, has scanned over 1 million nearby star systems across a wide range of radio frequencies with extremely high sensitivity.
And found nothing conclusive.
Nothing confirmed as artificial and extraterrestrial. This great silence, or the Fermi paradox, if aliens are common, where are they, remains a potent counterpoint to the idea that advanced spacefaring civilizations are ubiquitous and actively visiting Earth.
So SETI hasn't found anything from afar, which is a major point against widespread ETH. What about potential biases within academia itself regarding looking for evidence closer to home and the sheer timescales involved?
Those are also very relevant points. There has definitely been a historical and sometimes still ongoing bias within mainstream academia against investigating UAP phenomena or searching for extraterrestrial artifacts within our solar system or on Earth.
Why the bias?
It stems largely from the topic's historical association with pseudoscience, sensationalism, and fringe conspiracy theories. Serious scientists often feared, and sometimes still do, that engaging with the UAP topic could damage their professional reputation or lead to ridicule from peers. This makes it difficult for traditional scientific institutions to secure funding or attract researchers for rigorous, open investigation of UAP data, even as government interest has increased. It's often excluded from mainstream SETI conferences, for instance.
So the scientific community itself might be overlooking potential evidence due to stigma.
It's a possibility raised by some proponents. Then there's what's often called the timescale problem, or the window of opportunity problem. The universe is incredibly old, nearly 14 billion years. Technologically advanced civilizations could have risen and fallen countless times over those eons. Human technology capable of even detecting interstellar signals, let alone potentially recognizing or interacting with advanced alien technology, is less than a century old.
A tiny blip in cosmic time.
Infinitesimally small. The chance of another advanced interstellar civilization happening to visit Earth now, within this extremely narrow window of our own technological emergence and capability to potentially notice them, is statistically very, very tiny, unless interstellar travel is incredibly easy and civilizations last for extremely long times, neither of which we know to be true. Furthermore, any civilization millions or even just thousands of years ahead of us would likely possess technology and operate based on principles so far beyond our comprehension that we might not even recognize their activities as artificial or be able to detect them with our current methods. They might simply be too advanced for us to perceive directly.
Well, that's a humbling thought. Okay, and what about those recent high-profile whistleblower claims, specifically someone like David Grush, a former intelligence official, testifying under oath about alleged secret government programs recovering non-human origin craft and even biologics? How does that fit into the scientific counterargument or the current state of evidence? Where does that leave us?
It's absolutely critical to acknowledge these whistleblower claims, as they've significantly amplified public and congressional interest and directly influenced recent legislative efforts like the UAPDA. David Grush, who held high-level security clearances and worked with the UAP task force, has indeed made extraordinary, unverified claims under oath to Congress. He alleges the U.S. government possesses and has been secretly attempting to reverse engineer multiple craft of non-human origin for decades, and has even recovered non-human biologics associated with these craft. He claims this information had been illegally withheld from Congress.
Those are bombshell allegations.
Absolutely. They've generated immense political interest and provided much of the impetus for the UAP Disclosure Act, with its explicit references to non-human intelligence and technologies of unknown origin. However, from a strictly scientific standpoint, Grush's claims, while delivered under oath by a credible individual, remain unsubstantiated in the public domain. He has stated he cannot provide direct, classified evidence publicly.
So it's testimony but not yet proof.
Exactly. They are powerful, compelling allegations from someone who was arguably in a position to know, but they currently lack the direct, verifiable, independently scrutinized, open-source evidence that the scientific method demands before such extraordinary conclusions can be accepted as fact. Until such tangible evidence is presented, perhaps materials that can be analyzed, or verifiable documents released through official channels, Grush's testimony remains a powerful, unverified claim that fuels speculation and political pressure, but it does not yet constitute scientific proof of extraterrestrial visitation. It highlights the deep chasm that often exists between intelligence community claims and the requirements of open scientific validation.
So the government's official stance has clearly evolved over time, moving from outright dismissal and ridicule towards serious investigation and mandated reporting. We now have these official reports being released, at least summarizing some findings. Let's start with that first major public one, the 2021 ODNI Preliminary Assessment. What were its key findings regarding the UAP reports it analyzed?
Right. The June 2021 preliminary assessment from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence was a landmark document. It analyzed 144 UAP reports collected primarily by U.S. Navy personnel between 2004 and 2021. Its key findings were quite revelatory, especially coming from the top intelligence office. First, it concluded that most of the UAPs studied probably do represent physical objects.
Physical objects, not just sensor glitches or illusions.
Correct. That conclusion was based on the fact that these phenomena were registered across multiple sensor systems simultaneously, including radar, infrared, IR, electro-optical EO cameras, weapon seekers, and direct visual observation by pilots. This multi-sensor confirmation strongly suggested a tangible, physical reality.
That was a big admission. What else did it find?
It also highlighted that in 18 incidents, described in 21 separate reports, the UAPs appeared to demonstrate unusual flight characteristics. These included things like remaining stationary in high winds, moving against the wind, maneuvering abruptly, or moving at considerable speed, all without discernible means of propulsion. Some incidents also involved associated radio frequency, RF energy emissions being detected.
So they confirm physical objects behaving in very strange ways, but what about explanations? Did the report manage to identify what these things were? Did it pinpoint a single cause?
No, and that was perhaps the most significant takeaway. The report explicitly acknowledged that UAPs probably lack a single explanation. It established 5 potential explanatory categories if incidents were eventually resolved. 1. Airborne clutter, like birds, balloons, drones, or even plastic bags. 2. Natural atmospheric phenomena, like ice crystals, moisture, thermal fluctuations. 3. USG or industry developmental programs, meaning classified U.S. tech. 4. Foreign adversary systems, adversary tech. And 5. A catch-all category simply labeled Other.
Other, that leaves a lot open.
It does. And here's the most striking part, and the part that really fueled further interest and frustration for many. Out of the 144 reports analyzed, the assessment was only able to identify one single UAP with high confidence. And what was it? A large deflating balloon.
One balloon out of 144 military reports.
Just one. The remaining 143 reports remained officially unexplained at the time of the assessment. This meant the vast majority of these cases, many involving highly trained military observers with corroborating data from advanced sensors, could not be easily dismissed or categorized using the established bins. This lack of explanation for the bulk of the data was a major turning point in the public and governmental discourse. It essentially admitted, we don't know what these are in most cases.
That's a significant number of unknowns, especially coming from official sources. How did the next report, the 2022 ODNI annual report, build on this? Did it provide more answers or just more reports?
The 2022 annual report, which covered events analyzed up to August 30th, 2022, primarily showed a significant surge in data collection, largely thanks to the establishment of AARO and efforts to destigmatize reporting. The total number of cataloged UAP reports jumped dramatically from the initial 144 to 500.
Wow, a big increase.
Yes, 247 new reports were received and cataloged just in that period, plus some historical reports were added. The report attributed this dramatic increase directly to a better understanding of the possible threats that UAP may represent within the military and DoD, and very importantly, reduced stigma surrounding UAP reporting. Pilots and other personnel were finally feeling more comfortable and were perhaps being actively encouraged to submit reports through newly established official channels.
So the reporting mechanism was working better. Did AARO manage to explain more of these newer reports?
AAR had conducted preliminary analysis on 366 of these newer reports. Their initial characterization showed a similar pattern to what we discussed earlier. A large portion, 163 of them, almost half were characterized as balloon or balloon-like entities. Another 26 were identified as unmanned aircraft systems, UAS or drones, and 6 were attributed to airborne clutter, like birds or plastic bags.
Okay, so still lots of balloons and drones being filtered out.
Correct. However, that still left 171 reports from that newer batch that remained uncharacterized. And the report again noted, echoing the 2021 assessment, that some of these uncharacterized reports appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. End quote. It also reiterated the ongoing concern that UAP events continue to occur in restricted or sensitive airspace, highlighting both flight safety risks and potential adversary collection activities as key drivers for continued investigation.
So, progress in data collection, progress in identifying mundane objects, but still a persistent core of unexplained cases exhibiting unusual capabilities. AARO's role seems absolutely critical in all of this. Can you just recap their exact mandates? And what have they consistently stated regarding the extraterrestrial hypothesis, despite these unexplained cases?
Sure. AARO, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, was established specifically to consolidate and supersede previous fragmented efforts, like the UAPTF. It has a considerably wider scope, looking across all domains, underwater, air, space, potentially land. Its key duties are quite comprehensive. They are tasked with developing and implementing a coherent science plan for robust data collection and rigorous analysis, actively detecting, identifying, and attributing objects of interest, particularly those operating near sensitive military areas or assets, mitigating any potential threats these objects might pose to safety or security, and delivering regular reports, both classified and unclassified, to Congress and other stakeholders.
A big job.
A very big, complex job. And it's crucial to reiterate that AARO, particularly under its first director, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, consistently stated in public testimonies and reports that it has not discovered any credible, verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial beings, extraterrestrial activity, or technology of non-human origin. Their public focus, and likely much of their classified work, remains primarily centered on the national security implications assessing flight safety risks, and especially investigating the possibility that some UAP cases could represent advanced technological capabilities developed by foreign adversaries like China or Russia, potentially exploiting gaps in U.S. airspace awareness. That remains their prime directive, publicly at least.
That focus on foreign adversaries brings us to what I find one of the most compelling and frankly startling recent developments: congressional action. Specifically, the proposed Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act, or UAPDA, introduced in July 2023 as part of the defense bill. This sounds like a potential game changer for transparency, and the language used in it is, well, quite provocative.
It is indeed. The UAPDA, championed by a bipartisan group of senators led by Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, alongside others like Senator Mike Rounds, represents a truly significant escalation in congressional efforts to force transparency on the UAP issue. What's most striking about this proposed legislation, and what caught everyone's attention, is its explicit and repeated reference to non-human intelligences, or NHI.
Non-human intelligence. That's not language you usually see in federal law.
Not at all.
Hmm.
The Draft Act actually defines NHI as any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of nature, biological or non-biological, that may be presumed extraterrestrial or perhaps originate from an unknown terrestrial source, cryptoterrestrial. Senator Rounds, a key Republican supporter of the bill, very notably stated in interviews that the inclusion of the term NHI over 20 times throughout the bill's text was deliberate and not by accident.
Out by accident. That's a powerful signal from senior lawmakers on Capitol Hill. What does it imply?
It strongly implies that based on the classified briefings and whistleblower testimony they have received, like from David Grush, key members of Congress are taking the possibility of non-human involvement in the UAP phenomenon very seriously enough to embed it in foundational legislation aimed at forcing disclosure. It suggests they believe there's credible information behind closed doors pointing in that direction,
Yeah.
even if AARO publicly states otherwise.
That's quite a disconnect. And the Act also mentioned technologies of unknown origin, or TUO. What's the significance of that term, especially given the proposals for essentially government seizure?
The reference to technologies of unknown origin, or TUO, is equally significant and provocative. The draft legislation defines this as materials or objects associated with UAPs or technology derived from them, which incorporate science or engineering principles lacking a known means of human manufacture or reverse engineering. Basically, technology that seems too advanced to be human-made, based on our current understanding.
Okay, so potentially alien tech.
Potentially. And perhaps the most extraordinary and politically consequential provision in the original UAPDA proposal was the section that would grant the federal government the power of eminent domain to seize any such recovered UAP materials or derived technologies from private hands.
Eminent domain, like they used to seize land for highways.
Oh, it's
Applied to alleged alien tech.
exactly the same legal principle. This would allow the government to legally compel private entities, potentially defense contractors like Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman, as has been alleged by figures like former Senator Harry Reid, or maybe even civilian research initiatives, or private individuals who might have recovered such materials to turn them over to the government with appropriate compensation.
That's astounding. What does proposing that imply?
Proposing such a drastic measure implies a remarkably high level of confidence among the bill's sponsors in the underlying allegations that exotic, potentially non-human materials actually exist and are currently being held outside of direct government control or proper oversight. It's a legal mechanism you'd only invoke if you strongly believe there was something specific and tangible to recover, something deemed of paramount national interest. It signals a belief that recovered materials are real and hidden.
So the government would literally try to seize alleged alien artifacts from private companies or collectors. That's unprecedented if that part were to become law. And the UAPDA would also establish a specific review board, right, to control the flow of information.
Yes. Another key component of the UAPDA proposal was the establishment of an independent 9-member UAP records review board. Members would be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, similar to the board created for JFK assassination records.
Okay, an independent body.
Its primary role would be to systematically review all relevant government UAP records across all agencies and classification levels. It would have the authority to recommend to the president which records should be declassified and publicly released, essentially orchestrating a controlled disclosure campaign over time. This board would be powerful, possessing subpoena power to compel testimony and access documents, and potentially even the ability to provide advice that could influence presidential decisions on maintaining classification.
So it's really about wresting control over disclosure away from the agencies that might be withholding information.
That seems to be the clear congressional intent behind it. It aims to establish a mechanism with teeth to compel greater transparency and accountability from the executive branch, particularly the DoD and intelligence community, on the UAP issue. It's designed to prevent the kind of alleged decades-long secrecy and obfuscation that whistleblowers like Gersh claim has occurred by putting the disclosure process under the purview of an independent, presidentially appointed body answerable to Congress and the public interest. It's a serious legislative push for answers.
With all this increasing pressure for answers, this push for greater transparency from Congress, why is it still apparently so challenging to get more concrete information out? What are the biggest obstacles from the government's or military's perspective that keep this stuff classified?
It's a multifaceted problem. One of the major obstacles consistently cited by officials and highlighted by people like Lieutenant Ryan Graves in his testimony is overclassification.
Too much is stamped secret.
Essentially, yes. As Graves pointed out, virtually all UAP videos and likely most detailed sensor data generated by the U.S. military since around 2021 are classified at the secret level or higher. This prevents not only the public but also many congressional members and their staff from seeing the full extent of the current evidence unless they have the necessary clearances and justification. This overclassification creates a huge signal-to-noise problem even for investigators within AARO, making it harder for them to access, share, and analyze data across different programs. And of course, it fuels public suspicion and conspiracy theories because the perceived lack of transparency looks like hiding something.
But why classify it so highly if they don't know what it is?
That's the common counterargument for the military and intelligence communities. They often argue that classified UAP observations, even if the object itself is unknown, inevitably reveal sensitive information about U.S. sources and methods.
Meaning how we gather intelligence.
Exactly. Releasing a clear, high-resolution UAP video might tell adversaries more about the sophisticated capabilities of the F-35's electro-optical targeting system, or the range and resolution of a Navy ship's radar, or the operational patterns of our surveillance assets than it actually reveals about the UAP itself. So there's a constant legitimate dilemma between the desire for transparency about the phenomenon and the need to protect hard-won technological advantages and intelligence-gathering techniques from potential adversaries. They don't want to show their hand, technologically speaking.
That's a valid national security concern, certainly, protecting our own tech secrets. But what about data from non-military sources? Are commercial pilots, for example, who spend countless hours in the sky all over the world, able to contribute effectively to this growing body of data? Is their input being captured?
Currently, that's another significant weakness. There's a major lack of a standardized, effective civilian reporting system. The official FAA guidelines still basically direct civilian pilots who see something unusual to report it to non-governmental UFO organizations or perhaps local law enforcement.
Seriously, not to the FAA or NTSB or AARO?
Not in any systematic, protected way. This is widely seen as completely inadequate for scientific inference or systematic data collection. NASA's independent UAP study team strongly recommended establishing a standardized, reliable federal system for commercial and private pilot UAP reporting. They noted that commercial aircrew are often extremely frustrated. They see these phenomena too, sometimes frequently, but there's no official, trusted, protected channel for them to report weird things without fearing potential negative consequences for their careers, like losing their flight medical certifications or facing ridicule from employers or regulators.
So a vast amount of potential data is just being lost or ignored.
It seems very likely. Valuable observations from experienced civilian observers are either lost entirely, shared informally online, or reported to private groups with varying levels of credibility and scientific rigor. It's not being formally cataloged or analyzed by the government bodies tasked with understanding the phenomenon, hindering a truly comprehensive global picture.
That seems like a huge missed opportunity. And what about the sensors themselves, even the advanced military ones? Are they actually optimized or even adequate for capturing the kind of detailed data needed for definitive scientific conclusions about these phenomena?
That's another critical challenge. Sensor limitations. The vast majority of existing UAP observations, especially the compelling military ones, are essentially serendipitous. They are captured by sensors like fighter jet radars designed for tracking enemy aircraft, targeting pods optimized for identifying ground targets, or surveillance cameras looking for conventional threats that were simply not designed, calibrated, or programmed specifically for the task of observing and characterizing potentially exotic UAP behavior.
So we're using the wrong tools for the job, in a way.
Often, yes, or at least tools that aren't ideal. These serendipitous recordings frequently lack comprehensive associated metadata. Things like precise, unambiguous range to target data, accurate altitude and speed calculations confirmed by multiple methods, detailed measurements of the object's size, shape, temperature, electromagnetic emissions, or the surrounding environmental conditions, like atmospheric pressure, temperature, humidity, at the exact moment of observation. This lack of rich, calibrated, multimodal data severely hinders conclusive scientific characterization and makes it very difficult for scientists to rigorously analyze the observations or rule out instrumental effects. It's like trying to diagnose a complex medical condition using only a blurry photograph instead of detailed scans and lab tests.
Right, you need the right data to draw firm conclusions. This all brings us back to that core, nagging question that shadows this entire topic. Why can't the government, or parts of it, divulge more? We've talked about protecting sources and methods, but is it truly just about guarding secret U.S. tech or intelligence capabilities? Or could there be something else entirely, perhaps something more complex, maybe even more unsettling, behind the continued secrecy?
That is the central enigma, isn't it? The why the secrecy question. The explanation most often favored by pragmatic defense analysts is, as we discussed, the need to protect highly classified U.S. advancements. If parts of the government do possess game-changing technologies related to propulsion, energy, or materials perhaps derived from recovered technology, or purely homegrown breakthroughs like compact fusion, advanced electromagnetic drives, or even successful anti-gravity research, then the intense secrecy surrounding UAP reports that might inadvertently reveal clues about these programs makes absolute strategic sense. You guard your crown jewels.
Protect our own secrets, okay.
The need to protect sources and methods is also very real, as we covered. Revealing how we observe something can be as damaging as revealing what we observed. But then there are other possibilities. Some skeptics suggest the secrecy might stem, at least partially, from simple bureaucratic inertia, incompetence, or even ignorance rather than a deliberate, sophisticated cover-up. Maybe different agencies aren't communicating, data is lost in stovepipe systems, or nobody has the full picture. Or perhaps, as some whistleblowers allege, there's active obstruction or corruption within highly compartmentalized, potentially illegal programs operating without proper oversight, where individuals fear exposure or loss of control over alleged recovered materials or reverse engineering efforts. The reports of professional marginalization and retaliation against credible insiders like Luis Elizondo or David Grush for trying to bring information forward certainly raise legitimate questions about whether there's more than just routine security classification or bureaucratic fumbling at play within certain powerful, shadowy corners of the government or its contractors. The true reasons for the secrecy are likely complex, possibly involving a mix of all these factors, and remain fiercely debated.
A complex web of possibilities. So if the government can't, or perhaps won't, provide all the definitive answers, how are scientists operating outside the classified world attempting to approach this mystery? What's the role of the scientific method here, trying to move beyond anecdote and speculation towards verifiable data?
Scientists, particularly those now engaging more openly with the UAP topic, emphasize the absolute crucial need for systematic collection of well-calibrated, unambiguous data using multi-sensor systems. This means moving away from relying solely on chance encounters reported by pilots or the public, or analyzing ambiguous, poorly documented historical cases.
So deliberate observation, not just accidental sightings.
Exactly. It means designing and deploying dedicated networked sensor arrays specifically optimized for detecting and tracking UAPs. These arrays should ideally incorporate multiple types of sensors operating simultaneously: high-resolution optical cameras, infrared imagers, radar systems, perhaps passive radar, acoustic detectors, magnetometers to measure magnetic fields, maybe even Geiger counters or particle detectors to look for radiation signatures. All these sensors need to be precisely calibrated, synchronized in time, and gather comprehensive metadata about the observation and the environment. This structured, multimodal approach is essential for building a robust, high-quality dataset that can support rigorous scientific analysis and hopefully lead to falsifiable hypotheses.
Are there any specific academic initiatives actually doing this now, setting up these kinds of dedicated observatories beyond government programs like AARO?
Yes, there are some notable efforts emerging. Perhaps the most prominent is the Galileo project, based at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and led by Professor Avi Loeb.
Avi Loeb, the astrophysicist who also searches for interstellar objects.
The very same. The Galileo project is specifically focused on designing, building, and deploying a network of autonomous, multimodal, ground-based observatories. These observatories are being equipped with a suite of sensors, cameras, IR detectors, potentially radar and audio sensors, all controlled by AI software. Their goal is to continuously monitor the sky, conduct a systematic census of all aerial phenomena in their field of view, automatically categorize known objects like birds, planes, drones, satellites, and flag any genuine outliers, potential UAPs, for detailed scientific analysis.
So creating an open scientific database.
That's the key objective: to create an open-source, transparent, civilian-led database of high-quality UAP observations that can be analyzed by the global scientific community,
Yeah.
independent of government classification or control. Other academic projects, like the VASCO, Vanishing and Appearing Sources During a Century of Observations project, or the proposed exoprobe mission concept, are even more hypothesis-driven, actively searching for specific astronomical or physical signatures that might indicate the presence of unknown non-human spacecraft or technology. moving from passive observation towards active targeted searches based on scientific predictions.
That sounds promising. And NASA, the big civilian space agency traditionally focused on space exploration and astrophysics, is also getting involved now, right? How does their approach differ or complement these other efforts? What's NASA bringing to the table?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
NASA's involvement is significant, partly because of their scientific expertise, but also because of the immense public trust they command. In 2022, NASA convened an independent study team composed of experts from various scientific fields to specifically examine UAPs from a scientific perspective. Their final report, issued in 2023, recommended that NASA play a key role.
What kind of role?
Their focus is less on building their own UAP observatories like Galileo and more on leveraging NASA's unique strengths. This includes improving data collection methodologies across government agencies and civilian sectors, applying advanced artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning ML techniques, and helps sift through massive data sets from satellites, ground sensors, etc., to identify rare anomalous events, and crucially, using NASA's public platform and credibility to help destigmatize UAP reporting among pilots and the public, encouraging more data to flow. They believe the rigorous scientific processes routinely used by NASA, things like transparent data calibration, open data sharing policies, and demanding peer-reviewed analysis, can serve as a crucial model for how to approach UAP study rigorously and credibly, moving it firmly into the realm of legitimate scientific inquiry, separate from purely military or intelligence concerns.
So NASA aims to bring scientific rigor and public trust to the process. This all sounds like a genuine application of the scientific method, taking a structured approach to what has been a very unstructured, often sensationalized problem. How do scientists plan to use this new data and approach to move from just cataloging weird stuff to actually formulating concrete, falsifiable explanations?
The core principle is, as always in science, hypothesis-driven research. This is the absolute bedrock of the scientific method. It means not just collecting data passively, but actively formulating specific, testable, and most importantly, falsifiable hypotheses, ideas, or proposed explanations that can, in principle, be proven wrong through evidence and experimentation.
So you have to be able to test if your idea is wrong.
Exactly. For UAPs, this involves systematically testing potential explanations against the high-quality data gathered by these new sensor systems. For example, if a UAP is observed exhibiting unusual flight characteristics, scientists might first hypothesize it's a novel type of atmospheric plasma phenomenon. They would then gather all available sensor data for that event, optical, infrared, radar, magnetic field readings, and compare its observed characteristics, shape, temperature, movement, electromagnetic signature, to the known properties and behaviors of plasma phenomena predicted by physics models.
And if the data doesn't match the plasma hypothesis?
If the data definitively contradicts the plasma hypothesis, maybe the object is clearly solid or its movement doesn't fit plasma dynamics, then that hypothesis is falsified for that event, and scientists move on to test the next plausible hypothesis. Perhaps it's a new type of drone. Test against drone characteristics. Perhaps it's a sensor artifact. Test against known instrument behavior. Perhaps it fits the signature of a foreign adversary's suspected platform. Compare to intelligence data, if available. Perhaps it requires invoking new physics. Develop models based on that new physics and see if they predict the observations.
It's an iterative process of elimination and refinement.
Precisely. Think about how major scientific discoveries often happen. Astronomers hypothesized for decades that the expansion of the universe must be slowing down due to gravity. But careful, painstaking measurements of distant supernovae in the late 1990s showed the opposite. The expansion was actually accelerating. This falsified the old hypothesis and led directly to the revolutionary Nobel Prize-winning discovery of dark energy, a completely unexpected component of the universe. That process, even when it proves an initial idea wrong, leads to deeper understanding and new discoveries.
So the goal with UAPs is similar.
Exactly. The goal is to collect reproducible data with good signal-to-noise ratios, ideally using multiple independent, well-understood instruments, to systematically test hypotheses and move beyond the current state of "I don't know," therefore, towards a concrete scientific understanding of these phenomena, whatever that understanding turns out to be: mundane, exotic, terrestrial, or perhaps even non-human. It's likely to be a slow, painstaking, iterative process demanding rigorous analysis and intellectual humility, but it's the only reliable path we have to potentially finding real, evidence-based answers to this profound mystery.
Wow. This deep dive has truly laid out an incredibly complex and rapidly evolving picture of UAPs. We've journeyed through everything from easily explained mundane phenomena usual suspects, right up to the most astonishing reports from highly credible military sources, often corroborated by multiple advanced sensors.
And we've explored that whole spectrum of possible explanations from prosaic misidentifications and sensor artifacts through the deeply concerning middle ground possibility of advanced, perhaps secret human technology from adversaries or our own black programs.
Nice. All the way to the highly speculative, yet now officially acknowledged in government discourse, possibility of non-human intelligence being involved in some capacity.
And woven through it all is that constant struggle, that tension between the imperative need for transparency demanded increasingly by Congress and the public, and the equally pressing, legitimate imperative of national security, which often keeps crucial data locked away behind classification barriers.
Absolutely. The establishment of formal bodies like AARO and ambitious legislative efforts like the proposed UAPDA clearly show a significant shift in the government's approach. It's being taken seriously at high levels. But these efforts also starkly highlight the immense challenges that remain in gathering truly conclusive, unambiguous evidence on something so elusive, so potentially paradigm shifting, and still so poorly understood. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over. Given this truly diverse range of potential explanations we've discussed, stretching from the utterly mundane to the truly extraordinary, what does the ongoing UAP mystery ultimately reveal more about? Does it tell us more about genuinely unknown capabilities and perhaps entities operating in our skies? Or does it perhaps tell us more about the current limits of our own human knowledge, the fallibility of our perceptions and sensors, and the deep complexities and perhaps limitations of transparency within our own society and government structures?
It's a fascinating question to ponder. Where does the boundary lie between the truly unknown out there and the limits of our own understanding in here?
Exactly. And consider this. What if the greatest breakthroughs in understanding UAPs ultimately come not from capturing an alien craft or finding irrefutable proof of non-human technology, but rather from the very process of investigation itself? From pushing the boundaries of our own human scientific inquiry, developing new ways to observe and analyze our world, and perhaps forcing greater governmental accountability and transparency right here on Earth. What if the journey to understand the other actually teaches us more about ourselves?
That's a truly profound way to frame it. The pursuit of answers, regardless of what those answers turn out to be, inherently forces us to refine our tools, question our assumptions, challenge our paradigms, whether in physics, engineering, or even sociology and politics. And perhaps through that rigorous process, we ultimately understand ourselves and our own place in the cosmos just a little bit better. It compels us to confront uncomfortable questions about what we truly know and how we know it.
Absolutely. Well, that is all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us on this fascinating and sometimes bewildering journey into the unknown. We hope you're feeling a little more well-informed and perhaps, like us, a little more curious about the skies above.
Until next time, keep looking up, but keep your critical thinking caps on too.
Couldn't have said it better myself. See you then.